We are going to dive into Trinity Two. This is the second session inside of the Ghost Point Ceremonies. If you did not see my live video yesterday, we talked about Trinity One and how these patterns come into our body, our life, and our world. And that's the surface layer. So if you missed that live, go watch it. It's on my wall, it's on Instagram and Facebook. We're now going to the next layer. The ghosts come in at that first trinity. In the second trinity, our heart is now involved. So we start working with points that are having to do with our heart. That first point is literally called the ghost heart, the protector of your heart. When we have been plagued by these ghosts, patterns or beliefs about ourselves or traumas, these ghosts start wanting access to your heart. When they do gain access to your heart, is that you end up with intense cravings or desires, addictions. These can be cravings for sex, cravings for food, cravings for drugs, alcohol, all different types of cravings for affection, codependent cravings. These are all cravings of the ghosts once they've entered into our heart. That's one thing that shows up when we have ghosts that have been able to access our heart. Another thing that shows up is we can end up with people's words stuck in our head. So if you've ever had this experience where what someone says gets stuck in your head, it could be beliefs learned from parents or from something a teacher said to you, and it just gets stuck in your head and you keep ruminating on it and coming back to it. Another example of this could be if you have long term been living with ghosts that have infiltrated your heart, is that now, presently, let's say someone says something cruel to you on social media, which we know is happening, and you leave that conversation and you can't get what they said out of your head. What's happening in that dynamic is that was an energetic exchange between your ghosts and their ghosts. This is when we start getting deeper into why it's so important for people to be doing this work and to be clearing this stuff out, because it then impacts how we relate to other people. If we have ghosts living in our heart and other people do as well, then what happens is those ghosts start to interact with each other and create conflict and create drama and create all this pain. And if you ever get those thoughts from other people stuck in your head, this is a result of your ghosts. Abusive relationships are a big one that gets stored in this particular point. As we're activating the ghost heart point in the second Trinity ceremony, we are clearing all of this out. We are clearing out addictions. We are releasing the part of us that has these intense cravings and desires. We are releasing other people's words that have gotten hooked into our head and heart. We are clearing and healing from abusive relationships, no matter how that relationship was abusive, because there's not only physical abusive relationships, there are mentally, emotionally, and spiritually abusive relationships. If at this point we are really asking ourselves the question, what is on our heart that's time to be buried, time to be let go of, processed, and released, we can regain access to our own heart so that there's no longer these ghosts that have entered and infiltrated into our heart. Now, this point will also address severe mental crisis like mania and mental disturbances. And it will also address irritability. You will find that you are less irritable when these ghosts are no longer infiltrated into your heart. So those are a couple of things that show up in our mental health. The kind of the pretext of this ancient ceremony was that it was a resolution for many of the mental health challenges that are happening on the planet. And as someone just said here on Instagram, ghosting someone to the like taking ghosting to the next level. Absolutely. And what would cause a person to ghost another person? To avoid connection and intimacy, we're actually going to talk about in the fourth trinity. So come back in 2 days as we dive into the 4 points, because those are the points when there's trauma stored in them that would cause someone to ghost another person. The second point that we activate is called Ghost Road, asking, are you on your true path? So in life, when we've had trauma, when we've had people come in that have had a really strong willpower over our lives, parents, teachers, partners, lovers, friends, we have a path. We call it our destiny, right? This path that we're here to walk, this mission that people feel like my life has some purpose. It has a mission. I have a destiny. And we can call that our life path. And because of trauma and other people's projections and expectations and ideas about our lives, we take a detour. And that detour weaves us away from our true path. So, this point is a really powerful point to activate because it clears out several things. It clears out our blocked willpower. So if you procrastinate, if you feel like you're stuck and maybe you're in a freeze response and you felt unable to move forward with your life because of something that you haven't been able to identify. The beautiful thing about this that I want to clarify within this Trinity now is that you do not need to know whatever the trauma was, whatever the thought was, whatever the person, what they said, or the moment that this got locked in for you. And if you do need to know what it is, it will be revealed to you during the ceremony and you will clear it out as it's being released from your body so that there's no fear if a memory does come back that is a little bit challenging. It's coming back only because it's being removed from your field. So people typically are not re-traumatized. They're not constantly thinking about it. And if they do think about it again, you're thinking about it from a completely different lens because it's no longer a ghost feeding off of you, a trauma infiltrating how you see the world. It has been resolved. So that's one thing that I really love about this experience. You don't need to remember. And if you do remember, you remember in a way where it's this is being liberated from me now. I'm free. Not now I remember, oh gosh, now I'm going to have to spend the next 15 years of my life processing this. Absolutely not. Once it's remembered, if it needs to be remembered, it's being remembered as it's being released. This point is about our life path. Are we on our true path? It's clearing out the energy of overbearing parents. So I actually went to school to Loyola University and have my degree in criminal psychology. And I was going into the FBI training program when I graduated. I applied to it, was accepted. This was back in 2010. That path was not my path. That was not a path that would have led to me feeling how I feel today. It would have not been the path that brought fulfillment into my life. That was the path that my family wanted me to be on. My father was like, this government job is going to be really great, all these things. And I was like, I have no idea what to say to this. I'm just going to do what this person wants me to do. Because when I graduated high school, I was like, hey, I just want to not go to school and travel. And that was not an option. So that is an overbearing energy that takes you off your path. I am very fortunate that life threw me something in my senior year that got me out of that situation. That overbearing energy can take us off our path. If I go back to memories from childhood, I have a few things that were always standard. I always understood astrology and where planets and stars were in the sky. My grandmother still talks to me about this to this day. That was a part of me. I would know where everything was in the sky and what it meant. Even as a small child, she would be like, how does she know this stuff? I always wanted to be in service and help people heal. It was always really big and at the forefront of my consciousness. These were things I knew as a child I was here to do. And yet, overbearing energy and other people's ideas for my life took over and took me on a detour away from my life path. So that energy gets cleared. The trauma of being taken off your life path gets cleared. Any inability to move forward gets cleared so that you gain clarity and are able to move forward with your lives. Many of you have probably heard my story about how I came to the Ghost Points. They found me when I was having seizures, really intense seizures for many days, or actually 2 years. But I had one really intensely, and I was finally talking to my acupuncturist about this. And he was like, okay, we need to take you through the Ghost Points. This point in particular addresses epilepsy, it addresses seizures. In ancient Chinese medicine, they knew that these were spiritual crises. I knew I was in the middle of a spiritual crisis. I was not going to neurosurgeons, even though maybe I should have. I knew I was in a spiritual crisis, even though it was manifesting as seizures. I knew my healing was not going to come through Western medicine. I did not want to suppress the seizures from like pills and being reliant on pills. I was just absolutely no. I was like, I refuse. I don't even take supplements every single day. I don't want to rely on anything to feel amazing in my body, to feel healthy, to feel like myself. That to me is not healing. So after this Ghost Point, I have not had a seizure since. It's been over 4 years. I have not had a single seizure. They were done. I was having seizures, had the Ghost Points, no more. And that's how I knew the power of this. That began my 4-year initiation into facilitating this work. So this point deals with epilepsy as well. It deals with seizure because they are a spiritual crisis. Anything neurological is a spiritual crisis because your brain holds consciousness. Every health initiation is a spiritual crisis, but that's another conversation for another day. That being said, a couple other things, because not everyone is necessarily having epilepsy or seizures, and you don't need to be to benefit from this point, because I can guarantee that most people have felt this feeling of not being able to move forward or not having clarity. One thing my clients share with me is that they get clarity on what they're meant to be doing next. They get clarity around relationships that have been feeling not fully aligned. They get clarity about what they're meant to be doing with their lives, because any part of you that doesn't know your life path, you literally came here to live your life path. It was encoded into your DNA, your stars, and everything inside of you. The very fact that we forget is a trauma. Once that's resolved and removed, you have clarity. Your direction, your path puts you back on your life path. Or if you're on your life path and maybe you haven't been showing up to the fullness of your potential. Maybe some parts of you have been feeling afraid of being seen, afraid of being judged, playing small because maybe you didn't feel ready fully, or there's still some stories lingering in your consciousness. And that gets cleared and resolved. So this is just such a powerful point. We bring a lot of intensity, a lot of fire energy to radically put you back on your life path and to clean it up so that you are so clear in who you are moving forward. And yeah, it just is so profound. I just love it. I love what this point can do for us. So the third point and the final point of Trinity Two is called Ghost Pillow. And this one is when the Trinities get a little psychedelic in nature. And this is not with any psychedelics though, because this point is at the back of the head. And that's why we call it Ghost Pillow, because it's literally in the back of your head, like where you lay on a pillow. And this point is going to address all of the unconscious stuff. So with this point, the ones prior to this, 5 points that you would have gone through now to get to this 6th point, those are going to bring a lot of potential memories forward. They're going to bring information forward that you might know a little bit more about what you're processing in those points. At the 6th point here, at the last point of Trinity Two, we shift fully into the unconscious and we start to clear things throughout your lineage, ancestry, and multidimensional experience beyond just what you consciously are aware of. We go out into your spirit bodies beyond this point. This is really the initiation into the unconscious. This point is clearing any suppressed emotions. This point is really profound for preventing a lot of dis-ease and illness in the future, because most of that is caused by suppressed emotions. This point, I feel emotional starting to talk about this next piece, because I, for a really long time, didn't feel safe in my body. I didn't know what it felt like to be safe in my body. I lived with hypervigilance, constantly in fight or flight because of trauma. I didn't know what it even meant to relax. This point allowed me, and it allows everyone else that goes through it, to release hypervigilance, to release and let go so we can rest, relax, and be at peace in our bodies. This was very interesting. So I want to share a quick story with you about this point. because in Trinity Two, I was shocked to hear what was coming up. Like the trauma that was actually there for me in this point was from my infancy, from being a tiny baby right after I came out of the womb. And it had to do with my fontanelle being open, which all of our fontanelles are open when we are babies. This is our crown chakra, it's completely open. I did not have the energetic support that I needed because of my unique coding as an infant to protect my crown and my fontanelle. And that was a immediate trauma. So pretty much this body did not feel safe at any point because my fontanelle was not protected energetically or physically. And when this point was activated, it was like this wave of just relief came through my body as that an immediate trauma. Like how I would have never thought to go and think about my fontanelle in my infancy to clear and heal why I was not able to feel safe in my body and actually rest and land fully here. And it was processed and released through this process. And there's very little other things that can do this in a way that is so gentle. You don't need to spend 20 hours on 6 days of intense ayahuasca in the forest that is going to make you lose yourself and then have to integrate everything and cause a whole flurry in your body. That intensity is just not necessary. This point is bringing us back and helping us release anything that is keeping us from feeling safe in our body. It takes us out of that fight or flight. And we don't need to know what's being released from this point, though some of us may have insights that come through. And another thing about this point, this is a big one for a lot of light workers, especially, and people who identify with being an empath or people with a lot of just sensitivity in general. If you find yourself being hypersensitive and that is something that impacts you in a negative way, that makes you feel like maybe you can't go out into the world and do things. And this was a big thing for me for a time. I would freeze up in a trauma response in grocery stores because I was so overwhelmed by all the people and all the energy. When we came back from Costa Rica many years ago, I was visiting my family and I was at a Wegman. My dad wandered away from me and I curled up in a ball in the corner of the store and was crying and called him. And I was like, you need to come and find me. That hypersensitivity and feeling like everyone else's energy is too much is a trauma response. And this point clears that and resolves that. And I can go out into the world now, into places that I never was able to go before because I was so overwhelmed and I couldn't handle the energy and the intensity of the sounds and the smells and the lights and all these things. This point changed my life in that way. And it changes other people's lives. It being that hypersensitive, and we're all empaths in that we feel everything. But there has been a movement where people use being an empath as a means of validating their trauma. And what I mean by that is that they use this label of an empath as and almost victimize themselves with it by saying, oh, I'm an empath. I just feel everything. And that means my life is going to be really intense. Oh, your energy is really harsh and all these different things. And it makes other people perpetrators if they're bringing intensity or they're just being authentic in themselves in that moment. Way of looking at being an empath and seeing it as a problem and making other people a problem if they bring a lot of big energy into the space is a trauma response from being hypersensitive. And this point will clear that from your field so that you can just go out and you can be and you can accept other people as they are. Right now, November 7th in the United States of America, we are 2 days post presidential election, and we are seeing almost half the population unable to accept other people as they are. And when we cannot accept other people as they are, we cannot accept ourselves fully as who we are. And that is a trauma response. This point is really one for the collective. And I truly feel that the beautiful thing and what I want to wrap this live up with, I'll be live tomorrow and the next day going into Trinity 3 and Trinity 4. But what I want to wrap this up and say is that every single person on this planet has a heart and a kidney and a lungs. We all have these same meridians. We all have the ghost points inside of us. And I personally feel that because they were removed from history, I'll give you a little summary. When communism came into China, they had a huge agenda to remove the spirit from their medicine. And with that, all of the shamanic Chinese medicine acupuncture practices were removed. Taoist monks took as much as they could and went into hiding to preserve these teachings. And they preserved them for thousands of years, where they would not share them with anyone unless that person proved themselves worthy, because they risked their own lives. Even today, you can go to certain classically trained traditional Chinese medicine practitioners, and they will tell you that the ghost points are non-existent, woo-woo, fairy tale, or made up, because they were so heavily conditioned to move away and not trust the mystical, alchemical, and shamanic aspects of this work. Things like mushrooms and ayahuasca and other plant medicines were also made illegal. It was this attempt to remove the sacred, to remove the spirit from our healing. And we're at a time period now where that has to come back in, because people are truly in a state of crisis. They've been living disconnected from spirit for so long. I truly believe that these points are penetrating and activating open inside of people, because the collective is ready to heal and to rise into a new way of being. And these points, this system has to be used to clear out all of this gunk that we've been holding on to for generations. And this beautiful thing happened when I was going to Kauai earlier this year. We led a retreat, my partner and I, in Kauai. And I had the privilege of doing Ghost Point ceremonies with 3 people while I was there. This was when I was only doing them in person. And they were like, please, I want to do this work with you. I literally wore my body to the end of its capacity, because I wanted to make sure that everyone who wanted this could have it while it was there. I was driving to the first ceremony with this couple, beautiful friends and beautiful soul allies. I remember driving early in the morning, and I just looked at all the spirits of Kauai flooding to the surface. And I was just sobbing tears of recognition, and tears of delight, and tears of joy, because the land, the island, and the spirits that are there. And if you've been to Kauai, you know what I'm talking about. The spirits were so happy that this medicine was back on the island, because it used to be there. We know there's a huge Asian culture that used to be there from it being so close to China. The spirits were happy because when we do the ghost points on any location on this planet, we are activating them in the meridian of the body of the planet as well. These points are being resurrected right now and brought back into the surface, because the planet needs these points activated to clear out this trauma and move forward, get back on our true path. Humanity went through a massive deviation of its true path. What matters now is that it's time for us to get back on our true path and to clear out the trauma of living for thousands of years with things haunting us and feeding off of us and keeping us from knowing who we truly are. And that's what these points do, especially the second Trinity. So let me tune in here. I see there is a comment. The hypersensitivity changed with giving birth for me. I wonder if the process of giving birth is influencing this point. Absolutely. The fourth Trinity, which is a really big one for women who have given birth, one of the points in the fourth Trinity is activated while you are giving birth. So that point can clear things, and it can also bring on new layers of generational trauma a lot of times when we're giving birth. So that one, it is my favorite part of the entire Trinities to do. Sun Sia Mao actually showed me a way of doing it, working with mirrors and really evolving it for the modern day traumas that we have experienced today that didn't exist thousands of years ago, because women do have cesarean sections and things like that. Birthing is not happening in the most natural ways. Come back in 2 days. We're going to talk about that point. I want to let you all know that we have the virtual Ghost Points happening every Sunday in December, and you have until the 16th of November. I believe there are about 10 spots left for this group, and November 16th is the last day to join, because I have to ship out a package of what you're going to be using during the ghost points. I'm going to be guiding you through the whole journey, but there are certain things that you'll need to actually activate your points, and I ship those to you. So if you have questions, please do reach out to me, send me a message, and I'll give you the links if you want to learn more. If you're on Facebook, you can see the link in the comments already. If you are on Instagram, just send me a message. I'm also here in general if you want to discuss things about your particular situation and make sure that this is the best fit for you and that it's something that's really going to support you. I really want to make sure that what you're going to experience in this is going to change your life and transform you from the inside out. And I am not just going to welcome people in who aren't a good fit. I actually have denied a couple of people now from being in this group because it wasn't a perfect energetic fit. It would be better for them to do this work with me one-on-one because of what they've navigated through. So this is sacred work to me. This is ceremony to me. This is a devotion that I worked so hard to step into, and that these are tears of just honor and pride to who I am and to this body for showing up for some really intense initiations, to be accepted and invited to facilitate this work is something I take in like the tremendous highest honor. Please don't hesitate or feel worried about reaching out to me. I'm an open book. I have no judgment. I will hold space for whatever it is you want to ask and see if this is the right fit for you, because I want this to be a transformation that changes the rest of your life.